Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Honorable Deputy Speaker, this debate pertaining to the central bank bond issue, in a sense, is giving us some relief, as we parliamentarians, our primary duty is to be watchdogs of the financial management of the government. Unfortunately, since in the Westminster system, that both the executive as well as normal legislators are all in one house, a very vituperative and vicious type of verbal exchanges is unavoidable when debates of this nature take place. But yet, I must very carefully say that it is important for us to be somewhat sane in approaching the critical purpose of a debate of this nature. Now, as a matter of fact, I have also been previously the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, and during my tenure I was able to produce a report regarding one of the biggest frauds in our Inland Revenue Department, which dealt with the VAT fraud, which amounted to almost 4 billion rupees. I am quite satisfied that when I filed that report, this House took possession of the report, and then finally we were able to prosecute the offenders, and some of them are now serving sentences in the prison. Those who have been found guilty have already been found guilty of the charges that were brought against them. Now, we need to also focus on the need to see how the procedure takes place, what is the way in which we are going to deal with these issues once a report is filed by an oversight committee. I must say the chairman of the COPE, Honorable Sunil Handunetti, I must congratulate him. He was very responsible, and he did not allow unnecessary political interference to impede the progress of the vigorous and robust investigation that we were able to do in a limited way. But then most of the issues that deal with this particular matter is still at the level of assumptions. So we need to do more work in order to bring, if at all there are culprits. No, it's a variety of things. No, inferences can be drawn. Inferences can be drawn by the conduct. No. But let us, my purpose. Conclusion. No, I have signed that report. I have found, because I am not the person who has signed the footnotes. I have signed the main report. The chairman is aware of that. But what I am saying is, ultimately, as a former chairman of a Public Accounts Committee, through which we produced a report and have even now have been able to take the culprits to courts and get them punished, I was able to succeed in that effort. But now in this case, what I suggest is that the proper procedure is that this document, once it is tabled in the House, it is the property of the House. It is the Speaker who must take charge. And then it should not be left to the executive. This is my opinion, is that executive doesn't get involved in this. But I must thank the President for at least initiating the attempt to set up a presidential commission. I hope, because there's more needs to be done in order to bring the culprits, if at all they are to be punished. Because we also must in the meantime realize that our central bank and its credibility will have to be protected. In that regard, I must say the Honorable Mahindananda Alutgamage, he made a very vicious and vituperative and very robust attack on some members of the government. But having spoken quite tenaciously, finally ended up somewhat maligning his entire speech by casting some doubts or bringing in aspersions on the current governor of the central bank, Mr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, who, I must say, is one of our most respected international public servants. As a matter of fact, the financial markets and the business community and its leaders all heaved a sigh of relief when the President was able to finally reach a compromise with the Prime Minister in appointing Mr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy. He had a very long, distinguished career in the Commonwealth Secretariat. All of us, Honourable Deputy Speaker, when we go to Marlborough House in London, we were very proud when other representatives from other Commonwealth nations come and tell us about the stature and the value of our international public servants in that system. And Mr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy was one of them. And therefore, I must say this, because, and also I must say, this issue relating to Mr. Rajaratnam and his Galleon Fund, and Mr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy did serve in an entity that was created by him, which was called Galleon Research Services. And that was in no way involved in any investment or in dealing with any financial markets or dealings. It was only advisory services that he performed a very short period of time after his retirement from the Commonwealth Secretariat. And therefore, having said that, I must now move on to some of these issues of... now, we must also say this government has now, we have been responsible enough to bring in the Right to Information Act. And that is to be now gazetted, and it will come into force from February. That will further give strength to the civil society to hold the executive to account on many issues. And therefore it is our duty to highlight these matters, and also the fact that we have appointed an opposition member as the chairman of the Oversight Committee is a further proof of this government's intention to be as open and transparent as possible. And we have been able to collectively, members from both sides of the House, look at all these issues, all the facts, examine officials, and produce a report which has now set the platform for us to move forward and look at this issue. Therefore, we need to finally clear all these things and bring this to a closure. In that regard, I must also make a few suggestions. Now, this controversy or criticism is surrounding the date of auction, February 27th. The amount of debt accepted by the central bank at that auction was vastly in excess of the amount that had earlier been communicated to the primary dealers. The fact, why were the other primary dealers not aware of the debt ceiling being, or the amount of debt to be auctioned being 10 times the amount that was originally intended? And that issue, I think the Presidential Commission needs to look at this issue. Of course, one matter that is in that everybody knows was that a new government had come into being, and that it was necessary for the new government to, it had presented a revised budget for 2015 at the end of January. The revenue and expenditure streams, if they were accurately estimated in that exercise, the borrowing could have been streamlined to hold treasury bond rates at the lowest possible level. But unfortunately, new government coming into being, and in the haste in which the budget was presented, the reconciling of both the borrowing, the revenue and expenditure streams had posed some problems for the treasury perhaps, and then the the announcement by the Ministry of Policy Planning at that time that they issued a statement saying that the government's immediate needs for cash to make payments for the bills in hand and to complete incomplete projects were to be met through the treasury bond issues in March 2015. That was, and then if there was a need to raise 10 billion in one rushed issue, certainly the problems will arise. And therefore, the prudent thing would have been for these issues to be spread out to at least over the next few weeks, over a month or so that these sort of things wouldn't have happened. I'm sure now the central bank and the treasury, because here the central bank acts as the agent of the treasury to raise these monies to meet shortfalls in its expenditure program. And that is why we need to have a very robust system, and I'm sure, having learned from this exercise, certain correctional measures have been put in place. Now, looking at the allegations regarding perpetual treasuries.
You are running out of time.
I need to very quickly wind up. Now, there are issues, particularly now, what the Presidential Commission needs to look at is whether it's necessary to investigate the trading activity of all the primary dealers in the days before and after February 27th. Only if the activities of all bond dealers are examined would it be possible to determine whether any particular company or companies could be considered to be to have had some privileged information or inside knowledge in order to do what did happen. And therefore, we need to look at now, of course, the normal pattern is that the insider trading takes place when those who deal with it, the dealers are canny enough to discern some unexpected market activity, and they would try and go in to cash in on what is going to happen. So if that is happening, but how we need to know who are the people who originally wanted to sell, and who are the people who were willing to buy. Those things needs to be probed. So all the primary dealers needs to be, their dealings on or about the 26th of February and 27th of February needs to be looked at in order to finally bring all these grey areas into a proper conclusion, so that we will be able to discern from this how, if at all, this fraud has taken place. And with those comments, I rest my case, and I hope the Presidential Commission would be able to shed more light into this issue. Thank you.